Hey, what's got you looking so down?
You know why. Wow, you're really dreading playing Tears of the Kingdom this much? It's just that every time I see footage of it online, it always looks exhausting and tedious to me.
Whoa, none of that. You know what we say around here. We don't make assumptions based on online footage. Play the game, then have an opinion.
Yeah, you're right. I just don't know where to start.
Just start from the beginning.
The universe is a fascinating thing. It all apparently started with a big bang.
With Breath of the Wild.
Oh, fine. Ahoy.
Breath of the Wild released in 2017 and was as much of a success as the size of its open world. It's a game I first played in 2020 and I had a positive experience with it, though I also had many complaints about it. Which was odd because even though I claimed to like it, I can spend either years or roughly 31 minutes complaining about every single aspect of it.
I guess that's just the magic of Zelda.
But anyway, a sequel had been long awaited, and people lost their collective minds over the first trailer at E3 2021. I was busy excited for WarioWare. Tears of the Kingdom dropped last year on May 12, 2023, and the general consensus online was, oh fuck yeah.
This was another critically acclaimed hit by Nintendo, getting perfect 10s across the board. And honestly, it's pretty shocking that Nintendo dropped a game of this magnitude so late into the Nintendo Switch's lifespan, rather than say hold this thing off to be a launch title for the next Nintendo console and give that a hell of a debut, the same way Breath of the Wild did for the Nintendo Switch. But anyway, Tears of the Kingdom. Anytime I see footage of it online, I always get hit with this feeling of tired. It just looks so big and has this new building mechanic that looks so over the top. But again, the Zelda series seems to have some kind of hex where I'll probably end up loving it anyway. Because I'm half convinced that before packaging this, they coated first in cocaine. Nope, no cocaine. Oh well, let's get to it.
Anything to say before we jump in?
Did you just lick the box?
Tears of the Kingdom takes place after the events of Breath of the Wild, where Link and Zelda are exploring a cavern underneath Hyrule Castle until they discover a mummified Ganondorf who resurrects, breaks the Master Sword, obliterates Link's right arm, and causes an upheaval in Hyrule with Zelda vanishing into thin air. Link awakens with a new arm that previously belonged to the first king of Hyrule, who appears as a spirit to send Link off on his journey. So right off the bat, I want to say just how Tears of the Kingdom feels like Breath of the Wild again. We awake from a brutal encounter, meet the spirit of a Hyrule king who has us find 4 shrines that give us our abilities before being allowed to descend to the rest of the open world, where we spend a lot of time roaming, finding towers to expand our map, looking for shrines to solve puzzles, stumble onto Korok seeds, collect memories, and going to the 4 regions to help the 4 tribes of Hyrule by beating whatever temple is causing them trouble.
But I swear, it's totally its own game.
For the first few hours spent playing Tears of the Kingdom, I felt like I was still playing Breath of the Wild. Even the overworld map is the same.
Apparently, it was even an issue during development that the makers of the game were having too hard of a time differentiating it from Breath of the Wild. Good. If I have to feel the repetitiveness of running in a big open field again, then they can too.
Which is why, honestly, the game oftentimes felt like DLC or an expansion pack. Which, hey, isn't a complaint. Expansion packs can be great and sometimes even better than the original titles. So I'm not gonna make too big a deal that Tears of the Kingdom pretty much reused Breath of the Wild almost in its entirety. Honestly, it was really nice to check in on some of these characters that I loved and seeing how their arcs progressed. And there was a nice sense of familiarity with returning to some of these places.
Did you just call Mario Galaxy 2 an expansion pack?
I mean, it is, but that's a story for another day.
The biggest new gameplay mechanic here is our power to build things. One of our new abilities in the game is the Ultrahand, which kinda acts like the physics gun from Gary's mod. We use it to grab objects, rotate them, and attach them to other objects to create machines that we can operate. Which at first I was dreading because I thought it was about to be Clunkapalooza. I just always thought doing intricate building projects only works best on mouse and keyboard, but Tears of the Kingdom actually proved me wrong. Using the Ultrahand was actually really easy to pick up and not as awkward as you would think. It was a lot of fun building contraptions, and it was so gratifying seeing them work, and even if they didn't work, it was funny to watch them not function. We could build boats, cars, flying machines. The possibilities are truly endless. You can find so many impressive things built by people on YouTube, and at this point, Tears of the Kingdom is less of a game and more of an engine. It just makes me feel like I can do anything. Like, damn, I made this! Now there is room for nitpicks, but I don't want to be a negative Nancy because again, it was such a cool feature about the game. However, I will complain that the game doesn't have a storage feature, meaning I like what I built, but I don't want to leave it here and I'd like to take it with me in a pod and then unleash it when I need it again. Instead, the game kinda has a fast build tool it introduces much later, but it's not as useful as I would have hoped it to be.
Okay, just because you didn't utilize it to its full potential doesn't mean it's useless. No, I think it sucks. You either have to find a schematic and God knows where those can be, or it can be one of the last things you built. But if you build something with multiple parts, the game recognizes each part as its own device, so your history is just step-by-step instructions. See, that feels like wasted potential. Rather than giving me an item like a pod where I can store devices, they gave me this.
I want to quickly tackle the story now because I really found myself enjoying it. So Link is roaming around Hyrule solving everyone's problems because he's a good Boy Scout. Meanwhile, Zelda is centuries back in the past where she sees not only the origins of Hyrule, but also the origin of Ganondorf, which hell yeah, it's awesome to see him again. We haven't seen Ganondorf since Twilight Princess, 2006! And I'm not counting Calamity Ganon, it's just a smoke monster flying around a castle, which ripped off Mario World. Ganondorf is such a captivating force of nature. Anytime he's on screen, it's menacing, and you can't take your eyes off of him. I really like the plot of us gearing up to fight him in the present, while we also get to see Zelda fighting him in the past, while aware that he will inevitably reawaken. So she is also trying to set as many pieces as possible in place to prepare Link in the future. I think it's really interesting. Plus I enjoyed the whole thing of our friends from the previous adventure ascending to being sages in this one, which gave me real Ocarina of Time vibes. While I'm not gonna sit and say one story is better than the other, I think they're both great in their own ways. But Tears of the Kingdom delivered in more satisfying moments, like when all the sages gathered and appeared to help Link fight Ganondorf. That was fucking awesome! It's not a smooth plot though. With the open world nature of the game, it made things a bit disjointed once story beats started going, and oftentimes I feel like I'm being told things I already know. Breath of the Wild had moments where it felt a bit disorganized, but it worked out for that game because Link had amnesia. Here though, not so much. Sometimes I'm doing something and the way the dialogue goes, it makes me feel like I'm doing things out of order. Which goes against the philosophy of do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want that Breath of the Wild instilled. The champion powers in Breath of the Wild were awesome, incredibly helpful abilities that dictate in what order I want to tackle the game. The sage abilities in Tears of the Kingdom? Meh. So when you beat a temple and unlock a sage, you gain their ability, but only through the sage via their avatar that accompanies you for the rest of the adventure. And the more you progress through the main story, the more NPCs you get. Now the sages are useful, they help us fight enemies and bosses, which is great. It's actually really funny when you stun a major enemy and everyone just gangs up on him. Dust this bitch! But where the game feels clunky is whenever you need to use their sage ability. To use it, you have to first walk up to them, get the prompt, press A, then use it however it gets used. But too often in the game, I try to get a particular sage's ability, but another sage runs in front of them, so you end up activating theirs, and now you feel thrown off. Don't lie to yourself, this has happened to you. It's a downgrade because before, when I needed to use an ability, I could just do it. Now I have to find where they are and hope that nothing's distracting them. Also, the sage abilities themselves are also a bit of a downgrade.
Whoa, what do you mean? Yunobo launching himself is a great attack that we can also use whenever operating a vehicle, and it destroys boulders. Tulin's Gust of Wind gives you some distance when flying, Riju's Thunder Arrows are more of a direct version of Urbosa's Fury, and Sidon is just Daruk's Protection again. But it always felt clunky using any of them. In Breath of the Wild, the champion abilities were woven into the gameplay. There was nothing more convenient than having Daruk's Protection going on at all times and Mipha's Grace being ready to be an insurance policy in case any of the game's BS kicked in. Only Yunobo's ability was any useful because that one at the very least prevented me from breaking any of my weapons when breaking rocks. But the others? Tulin's Gust is not as good as Revali's Gale. Urbosa's Fury used to be an area attack, and instead of being resurrected with full heart, we now get a limpy water splash. But with these champions, you also got allies that fight with you, making the adventure feel less lonely. I won't deny that they haven't been useful in fights, but then they have times like these. This guy's been frozen for the last minute. Anytime, guys, he's wide open. See? How useful.
Anyway, I don't feel like I've bitched enough, so let's look back at the list of complaints I have for Breath of the Wild and see if Tears of the Kingdom improved on any of them. Let's start with the open world. So considering that Tears uses the same gigantic map as Breath, where the distance between everything was the size of f***ing Saturn, things are unchanged. I can start to complain about the same stuff again. I was actually considering just grabbing the audio from this segment in the Breath of the Wild video and just edit Tears of the Kingdom clips over it. But instead, I'll just encourage you to go and watch it. That video is this channel's Mona Lisa. It's all downhill from here. But what the game added to the open world was a whole new axis. That's right! How do you expand on an already obnoxiously massive landscape?
Don't.
By making you be able to go up and down. We now have the Sky Islands and the Depths. Let's start with the highs, and by highs I mean skies, and it's not a high. Gosh, these stink! It's kind of disappointing that the biggest selling point on Tears of the Kingdom is being able to explore the sky, and all it actually ends up amounting to is a bunch of floating platforms that have nothing f***ing on them. Gosh, it's such a waste of my time seeing an island, thinking there must be something on it, getting to it just for a f***ing rock.
I'm so glad I spent 20 minutes getting here.
You'd think it'd be a quality-quantity thing. Oh, there's such a small amount of real estate with these floating islands. That must mean each island has a purpose and something worth checking out. Is that another rock? In all fairness, the Sky Islands do have a few shrines and these Zonite depots where we get devices that we can spawn. But a solid 80% of the time, it's legit this. Just a rest stop when flying at most. Which is a shame because this tutorial area was such a neat place to explore, and the game doesn't replicate it after you leave it. Skyward Sword handled having Sky Islands much better because at every island you arrived in, it had a purpose. This rock here? What's your purpose? For a game whose identity was sold in the sky, the fact that it's so underutilized is a bit underwhelming. Also, the game tends to look very pixelated at times up here, and even the frame rate takes a trip to the drop factory.
Whoa, what happened to you not nitpicking the game's performance? The fact that the game is pretty much a rehash of Breath of the Wild and Nintendo still had the audacity to charge us $70 for it, it's free range. The fact that all the game's trailers were all so emphasized on the sky and then it turns out to not only be a waste of time, but also where the game seems to be performing the worst is them dropping the ball. And speaking of drop,
How about the depths? Where are the f***ing rocks? The first time I went to the depths was when I was in Death Mountain seeking the Fire Temple, and it was a great experience. Flying in, the darkness, the eerie environments, Poes lying all over the place, enemies that are covered in gloom, which is a substance that causes your hearts to become useless. Holy shit, is this hell?
not just yet.
The first time I went to the depths, it was on my way to the Fire Temple, which felt linear and gave me the wrong idea that each chasm entrance was another linear quest to some kind of treasure. Nope, it's just another open world that's completely dark with not much environmental changes. Now I know the depths are supposed to be explored for resource hunting, kinda like the Nether from Minecraft. I don't know, I haven't actually done that. But again, it's not enough stuff happening down here to warrant its existence. Every time I go to the depths to try to explore and see if I can find anything neat, it always ended up with me wandering around the dark aimlessly, getting bored until I decided to warp out. So, like the sky, the depths feel pretty dissatisfying. As above, so below. Good horror. So overall, I'd say the open world got worse. It's the same tiresome roaming around with extra layers that feel trivial. Honestly, I got so tired of the open world that I didn't even bother filling out the map before going for the final boss.
Looks like the old Hyrule fatigue got to you. Ah yes, Hyrule fatigue, the cop-out term that people use because they really don't want to say they're actually getting tired of running around a big waste of space empty world. How about this for a cop-out term? You're a bitch. Wow, ignoring that.
Overabundance of items was the next thing I complained about. And yeah, it's still a lot of items in the game, even more actually, but there was a bit more utilization of them. The other big new ability in the game was Fuse. We used it to combine items with our weapons. I never cared for monster parts in Breath of the Wild because those were mostly used to make elixirs, and to me, elixirs are f***ing pointless.
Oh wow, there's an elixir in the game that gives you slip resistance? That's great! One of the most annoying things in Breath of the Wild is how you couldn't climb any surfaces when it was raining. This is an improvement! You persist on wasting my time, don't you?
Anyway, now we can combine monster parts with our weapons to increase their damage output. Other monster parts like eyeballs give arrows homing abilities, wings cause arrows to fly farther, and choo-choo jellies turn our arrows into elemental arrows depending on the choo-choo. Choo choo. Now, while I think this is a huge improvement, as now I actually have use of many items and I found myself using the bow more than any other melee weapon.
But if there's one thing we can rely on these new Zelda games for, being perfect, being excessive.
When you enter the menu to fuse an item, you get a single row of every single material you have and must do a whole bunch of scrolling to find what you're looking for. No, I must ask, what's the fucking point? Why not just have only items that actually do stuff for the arrows? Why not give me an option to make my own wheel where I have favorites? Why make me scroll through things I'll never for any reason ever attach to an arrow?
The game's encouraging experimentation. You don't know what can happen. Maybe fusing your arrows with milk will do something remarkable. What'd you learn from this experiment? The bokoblins aren't lactose intolerant.
See, that is a big nuance, but regardless, it did still make a lot of items more useful to me. I didn't keep all of them, I still sold most of my stuff because again, the game does everything in excess, and now I'm richer than God again and I can afford all the outfits in the game, which prevents me from having to use elixirs.
Like look, now I have an outfit that gives me slip resistance, because elixirs can go piss off. I hate you so f***ing much.
Weapon degradation is next.
Can you tell I reused the audio in that one?
Breath of the Wild's weapon degradation was the absolute worst. Every weapon breaks so fast and it was so annoying.
It couldn't possibly get worse. Right? Right?
It gets worse! Every single weapon throughout Hyrule is now rusted and breaks even faster. Holy shit, why would they do that? Well, it's because the game is really pushing onto you the fuse mechanic, as fusing your weapons with anything not only enhances it, but also prolongs its life.
It's okay, Grandpa. You're gonna live for 5 more minutes.
Now, while I don't appreciate having to fuse being forced upon me, it did make it so that I had to experiment and discover new things. Like fusing a rock to your weapon makes it a hammer that can destroy other rocks. You can fuse a rocket to your shield and get a boost in the air. You can fuse an explosive barrel to your spear so that when you throw it, kaboom! Again, gets a bit excessive. I'm gonna fuse this sword with a sword. Oh, just you wait, pig man. I brought my ultimate weapon, a spear with an acorn at the tip.
I'm really banking on these bokoblins having a nut allergy.
I can poke fun all day at how ridiculous the weapons fusing can get, but honestly, it did make the weapons last longer. I'd noticed some of them lasting my inventory for a long time, which hey, is great honestly. I'd say it's improved.
Hey, there we go. You're finally not complaining about something. Okay, sure, it solved that problem, but it introduced a whole other. Why does there need to be so much scrolling? Oh my god, will you ever stop whining about anything? People can spend hundreds of hours scrolling through TikToks and Reels, but scrolling through a cup of fruits is a hassle? That makes no sense!
The Master Sword is in the game again, needing to be found. This time though, it was a bit more reasonable. I didn't have to use the internet this time. All I did was find all the memories, which eventually will put you on the path to finding the Master Sword. Where is it? Well, after it breaks in the game's intro, it gets sent back in time to when Zelda is, and she immediately starts to repair the Master Sword for Link to find in the future. Which you find on the head of the dragon, which this time needs stamina to be taken out. And the Master Sword still breaks.
You know, rather than being pissed and pointing out how stupid it is that the greatest sword in the world just spent 10,000 years being empowered and rejuvenated, it still breaks after a couple swings, I'm instead gonna focus on how this game treats me as a Zelda fan.
It was when I was at Zora's Domain I noticed a lot of landmarks were named after characters from other games. Lulu, Mikau, Darmani, Rudo. That tickled me. But this game does also confuse me in the sense that it makes the Zelda timeline make completely no sense anymore. Okay, so if Ganondorf was at the beginning of Hyrule and only reappears here, then who is this Ganondorf supposed to be? Wasn't it supposed to be the same guy across the timeline?
Oh god, what are you, a dork? Look behind you. The games don't want to be so strapped to this timeline, which is why the games take so many thousands and thousands of years into the future. It's also why we went from them giving us the whole timeline with Skyward Sword to them at this point just leaving it to our imagination. I'm not crying about the timeline placement. What I'm confused about is Ganondorf. While yes, it is great to see him, but his presence in the game makes no sense. How about maybe they're retconning everything? You remember Halloween 2018, right? It was a direct sequel to the first Halloween film and completely ignored every single film afterward. And that was a hell of a film. Yeah, and how were those 2 films afterward? not the point. If a franchise wants to tell a story that kinda contradicts the franchise, it's okay to do some retconning. But not when it's trashing something that's endearing to the series, like Laurie Strode being Michael Myers' sister, and all the Zelda games being connected and them all making sense.
Link's durability? Yeah, the game hasn't changed either. You'll spend a dozen hours completing shrines and acclimating hearts just for a common enemy to one-shot you.
Feels good to be rewarded for my efforts.
I try to get into fights, but it becomes so discouraging when one hit would be what sets me back. I spend most of my time dealing with conflicts the same way most people this generation do. I avoid them, because really, I don't gain anything from them. There's no XP, the monster parts I don't have use for, what's the point? If anything, that's actually why most of my weapons lasted as long as they did. They weren't used in combat. Most of my weapons were treated as tools, but once I was towards the end of the game and got stuck in combat encounters, all of those weapons started to shatter. So I guess this isn't solved. But still, this mostly avoidant approach to combat kinda led to the game being boring. Which is a shame because I see in the distance a dragon that looks like it'd be an interesting fight, but I remember I'll probably end up getting one shot and my reward for killing it won't be worth it either. Never mind then. It's worse. I'm just tired of it and it's ruining aspects of the game for me by now. At this point, I'm playing a jogging simulator. And not really a good one at that.
Hey, don't blame the game for the fact that you played a boring style. The game pushed onto me a boring style. Logically, why would I get into a fight that yields no XP, will cause me to break any weapons I have, and possibly kill me because Link is made of glass? The game pushes onto you building. It's not just to create modes of transportation, but you can also build contraptions that will help you with combat. Oh, I'm aware of that, but what you're trying to tell me now is that every time before I get into a fight, I have to first spend a couple minutes building a contraption? Yes.
Sound design. More of the same. The voice acting is a slight improvement. At no point did I hear a line get said and it felt a bit off-putting. The game could definitely use more voice acting because it still gets way too text-heavy sometimes. Now with a general OST, while the game does have some bangers, it's still mostly ambiance, which again, sucks. I get that it's supposed to be immersion, but I'm fucking bored here. The Pad is practically a tablet. It has maps, it has contacts, it has photos. Why not just have a music app that lets me play tunes from past Zelda games? If Metal Gear Solid 4 can have an iPod feature, then this game can too. It would make the long sections of flight more tolerable if I had something to listen to.
We have technology. Just put something on your phone, listen to a podcast, music, maybe catch up on your YouTube watch laters. Yeah, I'm not trying to have a screwed up attention span by having multiple things going on at the same time. How about just make an entertaining, engaging game? But anyway, it's time for the main event of any Zelda game.
The dungeons. Again, we have the shrines and the temples. Let's do the shrines first. Once again, we have a lot of these spread throughout Hyrule and the sky. 152, I believe. And they both present us a mini dungeon with a few puzzles to solve, which grants us orbs that we can exchange for hearts and stamina. The puzzles are now catered to our new abilities, so sometimes the game will throw us a construction project, which is good and really helped us develop our skill with the Ultrahand and also shows the possibilities of what type of things we can build. Other times the shrine would strip us of our armor, weapons, and materials and give us generic items to beat robots, and we'd have to get creative with the fuse technique. And other times, getting the shrine would be a puzzle in and of itself, and once we are inside, it's just our reward in an awesome trippy looking room. So the shrines again are a good motivator to explore the open world. But if I'm being honest, I think I like Breath of the Wild's shrines better. I don't know, they just felt like they had more variety. Here in Tears, it was oftentimes something you had to build and it kinda got old. The puzzles outside the shrines too were a downgrade. A solid 95% of the time it was just bring this green crystal to it, and how to get the green crystal either changed from being a boss battle, an errand, or just bring it.
I kinda missed the shrine quest from Breath of the Wild more. You know, the one where you had to build a snowball on top of a hill, the one where you had to stand naked on a platform during a blood moon, stuff like that.
I don't want to dismiss the shrines here. There were a lot of them that were really well made and fun to complete, but there were others that felt too similar to one another. And I was able to tell that I feel this way when I started being happier seeing certain shrines being just blessings, and at one point just losing interest in finding all of them.
Oh, don't take out the fact that you have Hyrule fatigue out on the shrines. The shrines are great, they're full of puzzles, and they're a lot of fun. Honestly, I think you're right. The shrines are actually, once again, really solid. I think I'm just so tired of this open world that it took something I really enjoyed doing in Breath of the Wild and made me not care about it anymore. See, it's your fault. But if there's one thing I will never get tired of, it's the dungeons.
Replacing the divine beasts are now actual temples, and we have more of them. We had the Wind Temple, Fire Temple, Water Temple, Lightning Temple, Hyrule Castle, Construct Factory, and Gloom's Approach. Now, while still not on par with classic Zelda dungeons, they are still a huge improvement over the divine beasts. You are still sent to find 4 or 5 locales before returning to the main room, and it is all again right off the bat marked for you on your map. I do wish they would stop doing that. First off, the dungeons are all visually unique from one another, which by itself is enough to make it better than anything Breath of the Wild threw at us. But the thing is, with all of them there are varying results. The Wind and Lightning Temple were both great, full of puzzles and a good time. But the Fire Temple on the other hand, oh my god, this thing is worthy of being compared to classic Zelda dungeons. This place has massive branching paths, a killer soundtrack. Even getting to the Fire Temple was an awesome experience. This entire section was the best part of the game in my opinion. Now the opposite of fire is water, and the opposite of great is, oh boy. The Water Temple was probably one of the worst designed temples in any Zelda game. First, I want to acknowledge what a dumb idea it is to have something called the Water Temple take place in the sky, rather than say, oh I don't know, bottom of a lake?
Cause that would make too much sense, right?
Also, it's not a temple, it's all out in the open. It's almost like they made a schematic and forgot to actually make it, well, a temple. I just built a flying machine and cheesed the place. It was very underwhelming. I kinda prefer the Divine Beast from Breath of the Wild.
Where are you going? To wash my mouth with soap.
Hyrule Castle was neat to explore without guardians everywhere, but this was less like a dungeon and more of a game of cat and mouse with an evil Zelda. But the story beats were pretty great. The Construct Factory I wasn't too crazy about. It's mostly getting the parts to build a robot and then you have to pilot it across the depths, which I didn't care for. But the Rock'em Sock'em robot boss fight was funny. And lastly, the Gloom Chasm beneath Hyrule Castle was just a gauntlet of finding Gloom enemies until you reached Ganondorf. And it was an awesome build-up. Descending into the cavern as the music builds up felt like an awesome callback to ascending Ganondorf's castle in Ocarina of Time. Overall, the temples are a massive improvement, full of fun puzzles to complete and structures to explore. They still need some tweaking, but this game does have me very optimistic about the next 3D Zelda dungeons.
Hold your horses, Soblev. Okay, not what I meant. I just want to say watch your expectations. The dungeons may be heading in the right direction for you, but that doesn't mean you're gonna get the same dungeons from beforehand. Just let me hope. And if anything, it'll give me something to complain about the next time I play a Zelda game.
Let's talk about the boss battles. At the end of all the temples, we got a boss fight against unique bosses. A giant bug, giant rocky spider, giant dragon, Rock'em Sock'em, Phantom Ganon, and a smaller version of the blooper from Mario Sunshine. The bosses were great. They all felt like classic Zelda bosses. But the finale against Ganondorf was truly something else. So not only was the build-up leading up to him perfectly done, but when you fight him, it was a mano-a-mano sword fight, which was pretty good. Though the lack of a soundtrack was an interesting and bad choice. He also attacks with Gloom, which again renders hearts unusable. But then in the second phase, Ganondorf powers up and his health bar just keeps going. It doesn't stop! It won't stop! And not only does he attack with Gloom, but he also straight up removes hearts.
Damn!
I always loved the Zelda games for providing an epic finale, and Tears of the Kingdom truly delivered here.
Though surprisingly not hard. It was honestly a pretty easy boss fight. I one-shotted it. So I don't want to hear anyone saying skill issue to anything I said. But then again, I did just say it was an easy boss fight.
Afterward, there was a prolonged and honestly boring cinematic fight against Dragon Ganon, but overall, Tears of the Kingdom stuck the landing.
And that is Tears of the Kingdom. We still have an obnoxiously big open world, a bunch of new and unnecessary stuff, weapons that break even more easily, and a solution that only prolongs the inevitable, and a main character who is as durable as Jello, which makes me not even want to engage in fights. This game is constantly one annoying thing after another. And I love it so f***ing much.
Again, I don't know what it is. There are things I really like about the game. The Ultrahand is something truly remarkable, and the fact that it works so seamlessly is an outstanding achievement by the developers. The temples as well are a vast improvement, but there's also so much I hate about it and will continue to bitch. I gave Breath of the Wild a 9 out of 10, but with this game, giving it the same rating doesn't sit right with me. But giving it either a lower or higher rating doesn't seem right either. Wow, the game does have a hex on me. I really want to hate on it, but I just can't do it. I'm just gonna leave it as a I don't know out of 10. Tears Tears of the Kingdom is a good game. It does a lot of things better than Breath of the Wild, but it also does a lot of things worse. I know I'm probably the pickiest dweeb out there, and I tend to hate on trends that are popular like huge open worlds and odds that are always stacked against you. Gosh, I'm not looking forward to this, but that's just who I am.
Tears of the Kingdom is good, but it's still really similar to Breath of the Wild, and is pretty much piggybacking off of it. I think overall Breath of the Wild might be the better game, but Tears of the Kingdom does have moments where it totally eclipses it. Personally, I can't decide which one I like more, but still, end of the day, we have an awesome duology of games on the Switch, and I see myself replaying both of these games in the near future. See, it wasn't so bad, and you were dreading playing it. Yeah, you're right, I shouldn't have assumed. But the game did still reach a point where I was getting exhausted of it. But it took a while for that to happen. Overall, I'm happy with Tears of the Kingdom. I enjoyed my time with it. Well, that's great, Soblev. Well, time for me to go. Wait, what? I came to watch you play the God of War and Zelda duology. I did, and I steered you on a path. It's time for me to go. Oh, wow. And I thought you were going to try to pull some stunt to stay. Oh, no. I'm a man of my word. Look, I'm buying my bus ticket now. Oh, great. I can finally have some privacy in the house. And boom, booked for 800. 800? Like, 800 hours? Like, tomorrow morning? Oh, no. 800 days. Huh? Oh, where I'm going, buses only go there every 801 days. And I missed yesterday's bus because you were taking too long to make this video. So, now we wait. What do you want to do next? Oh, I think Echoes of Wisdom came out today. You son of a bitch! Wait. How could I forget about the Amiibo support?
Once again, Amiibo support is in the game, and you can use any Zelda series Amiibo to gain exclusive armor and weapons. I've expressed in the Breath of the Wild video how I wanted to collect some of the other Zelda Amiibos because of either how good they look or the perks they have. And since then, I've collected 4 new Amiibos. I first got the 8-bit Link because 8-bit Amiibos are the f***ing best. It gets you the Hero's outfit. Solid! Maybe would have preferred if they went with an 8-bit head. The next Amiibo I got was the Guardian, which I think might be the coolest looking Amiibo ever. It doesn't grant you anything special, might be because there are no Guardians in the game, which does also highlight in the game that there's missing a serial killer enemy roaming around that you hope to never encounter. The Bokoblin is probably the most unnecessary and useless Amiibo ever, and for that reason alone, I wanted it. I don't think anyone saw a Goblin in the wild and went,
Holy shit, I need this Amiibo!
It only grants you Boko weapons, which, thanks, it's not like it's a common enemy and I can find these all over the place. And the last Amiibo I got was Wolf Link. I think being able to summon a wolf companion is such an awesome idea in Breath of the Wild, and I can't wait to finally have one in Tears of the Kingdom. Did they f***ing kill him?
Where the hell's the wolf? Wolf Link is not in Tears of the Kingdom? Forget I said anything. This game's f***ing garbage. Screw it, I'm going for the dragon.
Oh wow, I did it!